Have you ever wondered why we're living by rules we never signed up for? What if the discomfort you're feeling isn't a sign to stop, but a signal to start questioning everything? Hi, I'm Kim Romaine, and welcome to Questioning Our Conditioning.
Have you ever stopped to think about why we actually work? And I don't mean because you need to pay your bills. I don't mean because you have a to-do list of things you need to do, because you have this passion that you need to bring into the world. But why have we structured work the way we have? Why is it so encompassing in our lives? When we first meet someone, we say, "Hey, how are you? Tell me about yourself." And immediately we dive into what we do. It's not about who we are, it's about what we do, the work we're here to do in the world. "Oh, yeah, I'm a UX designer," or "I am a therapist," or "I am" w who are you? And this is a question that has been coming up a lot because in the work that I do with my clients, many of them have been asking questions about where their business is going, who they are as an entrepreneur. Is it time to think about retirement? And what is retirement anyway? Or is it time to go back into the workplace or leave the workplace? All of these questions presuppose that work is the answer to everything. And it's something that has got my spilkies up for a really long time. It has driven me nuts that we ask our kids, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Instead of "Who do you want to be when you grow up?" I shielded our now 16-year-old daughter from this for as long as I could because it drove me nuts. Everybody wanted to know, what did she want to do as a career? She's only 16 now, let alone when she was 6 and they were asking her. How the fuck could she know what she wants to do when she grows up when I, at 56, have no idea what I want to do when I grow up? I have a sense. But it's all this conditioning that we have around this concept of work. So, being who I am, I wanted to go on a little research tour and I went to all sorts of different places. One of the first places that I went to was I try to understand not just how did capitalism become the central part of our economy, and therefore why we work the way we work, why we have to pay what we have to pay for our mortgage, for our rent, for our food. I get that. This is not a lesson in economics. I'm talking about how did we get to this hierarchical structure and the relationship that work has to time in our lives. And what fascinated me is in the vast history that we have as humans, the word work and the word leisure are actually relatively new concepts in our language. And it's because we didn't focus on work being identity. That's fairly new in the 20th century, really since the end of World War II, when we focused on consumerism, when it became our duty to go buy more, to build up the economy, again, our economies, again, our global economy as well. And at that time, that's when the switch began to come into who I am is what I do versus what I do adds to my survival. So I do things like go hunt, or I do things like go gather, or I farm. And it was actually one of the things that I found fascinating was it was the introduction of agriculture that actually began this process of creating a hierarchical structure in our work and how we respond to the work that we do, because it was the first time that we had surplus. It was the first time that we had storage. It was the first time that we could hire somebody to do work for us. Somebody else could go and do the farming on our behalf. We couldn't do it all ourselves. So we hired people to do that, and in exchange gave them something they needed for survival, right? Eventually that became wages. And so when it really got interesting, as I was doing this historical research, where it really got interesting is when the church got involved and how we made these moralistic shifts in what work means. If we are not working, if we are not putting our time into working, then we are sinning. To have leisure, to rest, to have pleasure were all seen as sin once the church got involved. And so now we had these moralistic values that were pressing down on society, creating more challenges with the common person to just show up and exist in the world. We had shareholders and landholders, and all of these structures began to create the positioning where the masses needed to provide for the few. And as that continued to era after era after era, layer after layer after layer, add on top of it, we moved further away from just providing for ourselves as we did when we were hunters and gatherers to and going out and doing the work of caring for our community and caring for the land and stewarding and nurturing the land. We became these consumers and the producers. And eventually, what we've led ourselves to is this time of commodification where everything, ourselves included. I mean, think about this role of being an influencer in the world. That wasn't, on my list of jobs that I could choose from when I went to high school and college. Influencer wasn't on the list. And yet, the commodification of self is where we are today. And it shows up not just if you're an influencer, it shows up if you're an entrepreneur, it shows up if you're a business leader, it shows up if you're a community leader. However, we experience each other, we are actually experiencing the commodification of self. And that means that we have dissolved the boundary between work and self. So this whole concept of work-life balance has been thrown out of balance because there is no life, there is work. Life gets filled up with other things that we consider to be important to ourselves, hobbies, relationships, but it's also caring for and working for our property, our homes. It's caring for our children. It's caring for our elderly family members. It's caring for loved ones. It's caring for our own bodies. That is also work. But we have distilled this idea of work into being something that we do to receive wages, something that we do that we sell to somebody else. So it has become a commodity. Our lives have become a commodity. Part of why I think it's fascinating to have these conversations right now is when I look cosmically at the outer planets and where they are in regard to what human design gates they're in, and then in relation to each other, I find it to be a fascinating opportunity to distill down what we really are looking at collectively, because we're all under the same sky. So one of the things that I love playing with, I mean, Neptune is my home planet in that I am a Pisces, and Neptune is it dissolves, right? It transcends, it dissolves, and it's in gate 17, which is the gate of opinions. And so it's dissolving those opinions, those external opinions that we have taken on as beliefs. And so the work right now, it's going retrograde. So the work right now turns internal. So where have I internalized those external opinions as not just belief, but as dogma, as my conditioned idea of how I need to show up? So if we wrap this into this concept of work, who do I need to be at work? Who do I believe? What is the opinion that I have of people who aren't working in the same way? What is the ethical or moral judgment that I make when people are working differently or when I choose to work differently? Because quite frankly, that dissolving that we're having in this gate 17 of our opinions, how it shows up in our work is fascinating in so many ways, People are questioning, right? It's, yes, the quiet quitting. It's beyond that. It's, what does my relationship with work need to be? And what part of that is conditioned into my being? I need to live within this capitalist society, so I need to pay for a roof over my head, for food in my belly. Or do I? How do I do this thing if I want to be doing it differently? How do I connect with work? What is the relationship that I have with work if I'm not doing it in the traditional sense that I know of? Because the time that we've all been alive, we've seen work look a certain way. Absolutely. It has evolved over the times that we've been alive, and it will continue to evolve. And we're at this beautiful inflection point in human history where we get to change things and shake them up. And part of this energy is coming from, we have Pluto in gate 41, also retrograde right now, by the way. Pluto in gate 41, and Pluto is moving through Aquarius. And it's been there since late 2025. Will be there until early 2028 in this gate. It will be in Aquarius until 2044, I think, something like that. Long time. And Pluto in Aquarius, revolutionary, transformation, right? Those are two words that we can look at there. Revolutionary around Aquarius, innovative. And when we look at Pluto, we think of deep transformation, death and rebirth. So what are we dissolving in Neptune, in this gate of opinions? And in gate 41, it's the gate of imagination. It's the gate of new beginnings. So how do we transform? How do we revolutionize who we are as humans? This is a collective transference. This is a collective transformation. So who are we, and how do we begin this process again? How do we start again? And if we think about this again in terms of work, how do we do work differently? What do we want to do differently? How would you want to work differently? If you didn't have 10,000 years of conditioning behind you, how would work look different to you? And how can we take steps to move towards that? Because that's this exciting time that we're in. And work is just one area that we can transform. But what if we did? What if we took those steps? What if we were those revolutionaries? What if we were those visionaries that said, you know what? Fuck this. I'm doing it differently. How exciting is that? And then we have the last transit that I want to bring in here is we have Saturn, also in retrograde, also in Aries, and it's in gate 21, which is the gate of control. And what's fascinating about having Saturn in the gate of control, Saturn loves this gate. Saturn is all about the control, the restraint, and yet it's going retrograde, and it is asking us to clarify where those boundaries are, clarify how much control we actually have, and how much control we actually need, giving us this ability to really look at and work with these two other outer planets, Neptune and Pluto, in a way that begins to shift our relationship to these key fundamental parts of our lives, like work. What if the next time you introduced yourself to somebody, the first thing you said wasn't what you did? How else would you introduce yourself? What else do you want people to know about you? Because work is not the only aspect of self. It's just that we've been conditioned to believe that it is the key part of self. When we talk about our purpose in life, what is my purpose? What is my life's purpose? We often tie that to our work. What if our purpose has nothing to do with our work? And what if our work magically does connect to our purpose, but we didn't set out to do it that way? These are some of the big questions that I've been rolling around in my head because a few people, more than a few, have come to me and asked me these questions about how do they decouple? How do they decondition their connection to work in their lives? I hope that this has been an interesting exploration for you. I'm going to leave you with a few questions for yourself to see what comes up for you. So the first question that I want to ask is, what changes when you release the pursuit of productivity as a marker of your own worth? What changes when you release the pursuit of productivity is a marker of your own worth. In what ways is your life a genuine reflection of your own design versus an inheritance of somebody else's system? In what ways is your life a genuine reflection of your own design versus an inheritance of someone else's system? And then one of my favorite questions, I do ask this one a lot. Who are you when the urge to prove yourself dissolves? Who are you when the urge to prove yourself dissolves? Again, I hope diving into these questions is helpful. Probably will bring up even more questions for yourself. And that's a beautiful thing. Being an inquiry, asking questions. This is what leads to the change that so many of us want to see in the world. So until next time, be well.